Here we go, another Thomas fan review. Let's get to it. Well, Steamies, today I am reviewing Thomas Reborn, a Thomas and Friends fan-made series that is on the Thomas Lawrence YouTube channel. If you haven't already, I suggest you subscribe to his channel, go and watch his episodes, as long as you come back here to watch the review. When I was watching this series, it made me realise that there's a couple of caveats that I need to put in for any reviews going forward. The first one being, I won't be counting reviews of adaptations. For example, Thomas Reborn has done an adaptation of Triple Header, which was by Christopher Audrey. He's done a couple of adaptations of comic book stories from the Thomas and Friends comics. And there are adaptations out there of celebrated Thomas fan creators like Richard Jordan and The Buried Truck. I won't be reviewing these because these are all very well established and recognised forms of Thomas content. They built their following, they've earned their respect. These reviews are for smaller channels, so I can help them get a little bit of a boost to their subscribers and their numbers. Again, it's not to disrespect the channels that I'm reviewing, it's so I can help them. So by this logic, the first series of Thomas Reborn has 24 episodes, and I will be reviewing 10 of them. I'll do a top 10 list from not so great to fantastic, because none of them are bad. I'll give the ranking, a description of the episodes, and my own review out of 10. Again, I'll try not to count things like the quality of the videos or the production. I'll just try and look at it as a fan who enjoys watching original Thomas content. And before people ask, yes, I did do some voiceover work on Thomas Reborn. It does not affect my decision on any of the rankings whatsoever. I took myself out of the story and looked at it for what it was, original Thomas content. Okay, let's dive in. Number 10, Percy's Poltergeist. Percy's ghost train trick goes around the branch line again, much to Thomas's disappointment, but this soon stops when he has a spooky encounter. I like this as a nice additional story to Ghost Train from Series 2. The nighttime scenes were a little hard to see, but all I needed to do was turn up the brightness for that one, and it was fine. Overall, it's a very solid story. I do like the Thomas and Mavis dynamic in it. Didn't see a lot of that in the TV series, at least the classic ones anyway. And it was a good twist that Thomas actually had nothing to do with anything that happened. A solid pilot episodes, and my own personal ranking was 6 out of 10. Number 9, Gordon's Farm. Gordon's express runs are getting tiring during Christmas time, but will his whining stop when he has a run-in with a cow? One thing that I noticed about a lot of the Thomas Reborn original stories is that a lot of them are either in a winter setting or at Christmas time, and this is no different. I know I wasn't going to review the quality of the episodes, but between the first episode and the third episode, which is this one, you can tell that there has been a lot of improvements. The transitions were a lot smoother, so very well done. Again, it linked to another Series 2 episode, Cows. And I like that he done a POV shot of the cow charging at Gordon. It was quite interesting. It had that classic Series 2 style vibe that I was expecting, and some good elements of humour. I would say 7 out of 10. Number 8, The Flying Scots. Donald and Douglas have never pulled an express, but when Gordon gets a rest, it seems that the twins may have their chance. Okay, you've got Donald and Douglas in it, and already that's a winner in my book. One thing I really noticed in this was that Thomas Lawrence has a very good vocal range. I've known that anyway working with him in the past, but the range of accents that he uses throughout the series is quite amazing. And in this episode, it's no different. He's really good at channeling the speech patterns of Donald and Douglas. I know that we're Scottish, so we do already have those speech patterns in place, but if you read the Railway series books and the way that Wilbur Audrey wrote their dialogue, it's not how Scots speak. The Henry crash did have him bobbling around a little bit like he was in Bobba, but I loved the sequence with Donald and Douglas pulling the express. Could have shortened it down a little bit though, but still solid. 7 out of 10. Number 7, James's Snow Day. What goes around comes around. I think we need a little bit more to the description than just what goes around comes around. The other ones have got some good teases in them. It's just my suggestion. I voiced James in this episode, so I cannot review the voice work on that. I must remain impartial. But one of the reasons I agreed to work on it was because the story was good. Granted, it's just Thomas Terrence in the snow, but using a tender engine. But I do like the fact that it's James that gets stuck in the snow because of his pride and his ego, because he is an egotistical git. And there's a good sense of irony that it's Thomas that has to save him and essentially be the bigger engine, but he's a tank engine. Kind of gave me that James in the Trouble with Trees vibe from Series 5. I give this episode an 8 out of 10. Number 6, The Station That Groans. Spooky situations are sometimes left unexplained. We're into the really good episodes now. These are all 9 and 10 out of 10s, which is pretty damn good for original Thomas content. One of the things that made this stand out for me is that it was the first original episode that had the full voice cast. It just gave it that little bit of a shot in the arm in terms of quality. I like that there was continuity in how Percy linked his experience from episode 1 into this episode. Just like with Thomas's winter setting episodes, he's got a knack for spooky ones. And having it being Henry and Percy as the lead protagonists for the story was an excellent choice. It had a mix of Series 5 Haunted Henry and Series 3 Thomas Percy and the Dragon. And it was a good twist that this one had a logical explanation where it was actually little boys pretending to be ghosts. 2 Halloween episodes, 2 good twist endings. This one's a 9 out of 10. Number 5, Donald and the Signalman. Donald has a feud with the Signalman, but who will get the last laugh? There's a lot that I really liked about this episode. I like the fact that it was just focused on Donald, and what is clearly a bit of PTSD from the Signalman because he's got a grudge against Donald. I've always spoke about how I'm watching the stories for the engines and I'm not bothered about human characters unless they're crucial to the running of the railway. This is how you use a human character in a Thomas story. The Signalman is crucial to running the railway, and because of that accident, he winds up negligent in his duties and blames it on the engine rather than himself until Sir Topham Hatt turns up and he finally gets his comeuppance. And the fact that Donald points out to the Signalman that engines don't control the points and they don't control the signals, that is the realism that we want. The engines know their limitations. They don't bounce about like in that dreaded reboot. Great work. 9 out of 10. Number 4, A Scrapping Feeling. Not everything is scary. I love Jack Cunningham's voice as Stepney. In case you're wondering, that's the guy who has the little owl channel. His voice is really reminiscent of 10 Cents from Tugs, and I think that voice actor was really strong. So it's good props for you, Jack. Well done. I like that it was a Percy and Stepney dynamic rather than a Thomas and Stepney. A nice change of pace. It was an enjoyable plot. I loved the Splodge cameo. And I like that they went from being baddie henchmen to good guys. Character development. I like it. 10 out of 10. Number 3, Thomas, Stepney and the snowplow. Thomas hates his snowplow, but tricks Stepney, which leads to dangerous consequences. I looked at the cast list and saw that Boko was being voiced by Ringo Starr, and I genuinely thought, how the hell is he going to do this? Turns out he just stitched dialogue together from previous classic series episodes. But it worked really well. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the episodes where Chef got killed off in South Park. Again, the voice cast is really strong. Yes, I know, I voiced Cranky, don't judge me. This was the penultimate episode of original Thomas Reborn content, and you can tell how much the game has improved since those early days. For example, the details of having dried in snow on the side of the engines. Not a lot of people would look for that. And the story itself was very classic era. Good work all round, and I would say, again, 10 out of 10. Number 2, Ivo Hugh Saves the Day. The only narrow gauge engine story on this list. The other 2 episodes were Christopher Audrey adaptations to introduce Ivo Hugh, and this original story was fantastic. I think that us as Thomas creators always seem to have a bit more knack for narrow gauge style stories. We just seem to up our game with it. I like how Ivo Hugh is given a nice purple livery. He actually looks a bit like one of the mountain engines, but that's a compliment because I love the mountain engines. I know that people say it's actually meant to be a dark blue livery, but I sometimes have problems with colours. I still think my parents' couch is blue when it's actually black. And I also think that if you pair any narrow gauge engine with Duncan, you're in for a blinder. It just seems to have a natural chemistry. To me, this felt like a classic series episode and a logical continuation for the Christopher Audrey Railway series. But Thomas, you wrote a better story than Christopher Audrey did for any of the narrow gauge engines. So good job. And the number 1 episode of Thomas Reborn is A Wish for Christmas. We talk about saving the best to last. Oh my goodness, you really saved the best for last, didn't you guys? This was a joint collaboration as it was written by Thomas Lawrence and Jack Cunningham. It's 50 minutes long, but the story was so good. They had engines like Fergus and Murdoch in it. They had some original characters in it, such as Sleazus. Jack, did you design Sleazus? Because that was nightmare fuel. When we first see him, I genuinely jumped out of my seat. Again, this is a compliment. People think Thomas and Friends shouldn't be scary, but it is. And this was the best example of it. Thoroughly enjoyed this episode. It's why I'm not going into the description of what it's actually about, because I want you to go and watch it. Once this review is done, go and watch that episode. There is only one fault that I can put for it. I'm not a fan of the musical numbers. Nothing against musicals. And I know that Thomas and Friends movies and other types of media have had music involved. I've made my case about how much I love the music in Thomas series. But I was so invested in the story that it felt like when I watched Calling All Engines and there was the cuts between the story and the learning segments. The learning segments took me out of that story, like the musical numbers took me out of this story. If you guys can do an edit where you've just got the dialogue, I would suggest you upload it and give like an alternative choice for fans. Because as much as I love Be Prepared from The Lion King, I don't think it should have been a Sleazus musical number. Sorry. But there are so many good points about this episode, this feature-length special, that I could not leave it out of the list. And I could not make it number one. You guys done absolutely brilliant. The entire voice cast was strong. I'm so grateful I got to voice Saul Goodman as an arrogant English guy. So happy about that. And it's a great way to cap off the first series of your Thomas Reborn. Well done. 10.5 out of 10. Yeah, I gave an extra half. Don't judge me. So that's my review of the Thomas Reborn series. I highly recommend you go and check it out. The link to his channel will be in the description. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep on chugging.